So, hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much for joining here in Paris at the university. And this is a pre-conference to the European Access Academy, which will start in the afternoon, that we are holding together with EUCOPE, looking into the needs of small and mid-sized companies. And on the next slide, just go down one slide. Here. Here we are. I don't think I have to give a lot of background on the European Access Academy. In the end, our aim is to support the implementation of the European regulation. We are supportive of this regulation, but the bottom line is good medicines should reach patients, and methods should allow that this is the case. And the goal of today, let me go one slide back, of this meeting, 2 hours meeting, is to define needs and gaps of small and mid-sized companies in EU HTA. They are different to the big companies that are prepared, have departments, have knowledge, have technical skills in-house, and they are often challenged by, let's say, the hurdles, the bureaucracy, the legitimate administrative needs. And the goal is, how can we, in an environment of a Biotech Act and so on, support small companies, mid-sized companies with this process. That's the goal of this morning. And we intend to write later on, EUCOPE and EAA, a letter to the Commissioner specifying the needs for SMEs in that context. We are very happy that Konstantinos Siogas is with us. That gives us an example what EMA does with the needs of, let's say, small and mid-sized companies, and HTA is evolving, and of course there are major needs. We want to support small, intelligent, smart biotechs, but here we are, we need a support structure. Optional content topics of such letter, and we will get back to them after the presentations, are, for example, Alexander and I discussed this one, procedural guidance documents. So how shall I say, a cookbook, that small companies have a, let's say, an address where they can download information, what is the process about, how can we navigate the process, and so on. Then, of course, personable access structures, that it's not just a cookbook, that there's a phone number behind that can be approached, and about questions, is it ATMP or not, or whatever the questions are. And then, of course, the aim is in the mid to long term, because HTA is here to stay, building a learning system, i.e. some kind, for example, an official platform for experience sharing between SMEs and HTA bodies. Something like this. We will come back to those points later on and discuss with you what should be in such a letter. But the goal of this meeting is to frame the letter. The flow of the agenda is to start with experience exchange and then the discussion of the gaps. Alexander, what to you?
Absolutely. First of all, it's our first time, Matthias and me, my first time here in the European Access Academy. Thanks, Jörg and Elaine, for hosting us and accepting our application to become a member to the European Access Academy. It's a great pleasure to be here. That's the first important point I wanted to make. And the second point is really, I'm really delighted to be here today for the first time with such a impressive faculty and with so many people here to discuss the impact of the EU HTA regulation on mid-sized companies, because we have in the HTA stakeholder network and in various conferences, we have talked about challenges from various different perspectives, and so from patients and finding the right KOLs and so on. And it's really important to really have this discussion today, and again, I'm really grateful that we could make this happen in the course of this year, because as we've seen, and I don't have the full data about how many of those files which we are currently having pending or procedures we're having on the EUHTA are with SMEs. And when I talk about SMEs, let me also say very clearly that the definition is not the definition which we know by EU legislation. SMEs, which we represent in EUCOPE, very often are mid-sized companies, and some of those companies are just a bit unprepared, I must say. And some mid-sized companies are very well prepared. We will also hear company perspectives today. So there is a divergence of different preparedness scenarios, and we would like to discuss that. Of course, and you know, I think most of you know EUCOPE as a, I would say, reliable partner. We're not asking for something which is unfeasible, which cannot be done in legislation, and I'm glad the EMA is there, and we will always argue in the given framework, but let me also make very clear that we all want good and robust dossiers. And I think the worst scenario we can have is a company being completely unprepared and then needs to go into the EUHTA. And this is not good from the patient perspective, from the physician perspective, because we might have a good product which is launched based on a not so good dossier with a poor outcome in national decision-making processes. It's not what we want. So how can we prepare in the given framework? I think this is how I would like to frame the discussion today. And let me also say one thing which we had discussed last week in Amsterdam in a Congress. It's really about also multiple PICO schemes and the fact that it all has to come in given timelines. So if I have 3, 4, 5 PICO schemes, there are timelines where I need to feed in all that data. And when I compare it to the EMA processes, I just have one dossier, and I have to handle, and I have one stakeholder to handle, which is the EMA. But I have one comparator in EMA usually. Maybe I have subgroups and so on, but I don't have 4 or 5 different dossiers. And I think the issue I'd like to raise, and then I hand over back to you, Jörg, is the fact that there are tough timelines, and the more PICO schemes we're having, the more challenging it is due to the timelines, because it all needs to come in at the same point in time. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I'm really grateful we have such a great faculty here with us today, and I'm grateful to the European Access Academy that we first time put the SME mid-sized company perspective into the discussion, because it's important to have good dossiers. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexander. The agenda you see on this slide. We have a couple of introductory presentations by Leslie. I will introduce her in a second. By Alexander, by Marcus, by Konstantinos from EMA, and from one company perspective, not yet submitted, but in the process of submission, which is Marlene. And then from 12 on, I ask, let's say, all presenters to stick to 10 minutes so that at 12, from 12 to 1, we can really have an open discussion about what are the needs that we should vocalize in the end.